Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Today we're going to continue talking with Mike Snyder. He worked as an attorney on the famous K Street in Washington, D.C. He's been writing many articles and books over the last 5 years, some 2,000 articles about the coming economic collapse and the end of the American dream. His articles have become quite popular, published and discussed on America's largest radio and TV programs literally around the world. He's written 2 books, Beginning of the End and Get Prepared Now. When he speaks at the Prophecy Club, he's going to be making 2 DVDs. Saturday night, he'll be speaking on Prepare for the Economic Collapse and World War III. Topics will be the next Great Depression, credit crunch, civil unrest, Russian preparations for World War III, and the 20 signs that Russia is not only preparing to fight, but believes she will win a nuclear war against America. Then, Sunday morning, 9:30, the regathering of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. This is really important. A lot of people are digging holes in the earth and putting doors on it and planning to survive the trouble ahead. I don't. I'm not planning to do that. I'm planning to leave the lower 48 states. And according to Jeremiah 51, verse 50, it says, let Jerusalem come into your mind. I believe that the Bible's clearly teaching that there's a lot of verses that says massive amounts of people, both Christians and Jews, will move to Israel. As a matter of fact, Ezekiel 39, verse 28 says that not one Jew, not one of them, will be left outside of Israel. So for these people that are worried about who the Jews really are, you don't have to worry. God knows. He's got their address, he's got their phone number, he's got their social security number, and he's got their heart. And when it comes time, he will send them all back to Israel. He's going to be talking about that. Very important information. So, Michael, welcome back to the Prophecy Club.
Thank you, Stan. It's great to be back with you.
All right, now we wanted to talk about Russia. See, a lot of people are saying, if you watch the news, all the news is directed toward the Middle East or Obamacare. It seems like there's nothing in the news, or almost nothing out there, talking about how the Russian bear is growing angry and in military might, and everything Russia is saying and doing is saying that not only is she preparing, but believes she can fight and win a nuclear war against America. Tell us about that.
Yeah, as we mentioned in a previous program, the anti-American sentiment in Russia right now is the highest that's ever been measured, much higher than at the end of the Cold War, or during the Cold War era. The Russian people are upset. They're angry about what's happening in Ukraine. They blame the United States for the massive decline in the price of oil. They think it's a geopolitical move by the United States to hurt Russia. They're talking heads. If you watch Russian television, if you read what their intellectuals are writing and saying, it's extremely anti-American, and Russian nationalism is soaring. And this is reflected in what they're doing militarily. They regard the United States as their primary strategic enemy, and they're arming themselves as if they are preparing to fight a war against the United States. And in such a war, the Russians believe that the key will be to strike hard and to strike fast. And so what we're seeing is a massive modernization program. And so let's talk about some of these weapon systems that the Russians are building right now. One of them is the Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile. Most Americans have heard of the SS-18, also known as the Satan intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those were basically the core of the Russian strategic nuclear arsenal for many years, but now they're being replaced by the Sarmat, also known as the Sarmation. It's a liquid-fueled, MIRV-equipped, super heavy thermonuclear intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, a lot of people may not know what I mean when I say MIRV-equipped. Well, what MIRV means is multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle. So what you have is one missile goes up, but then 10 or 15 warheads come off and are independently targetable to specific targets. So they don't all go to the same targets. They go to different targets. And so the Russians have upgraded to this state-of-the-art new intercontinental ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, what is the United States doing? Well, CBS News recently did a report where they went inside our aging missile silos. And what they found is that we're using technology that's ridiculously outdated. They found that we're still using 8-inch floppy disks. I'm not talking about the smaller, hard floppy disks that some people may still be familiar with. But if you're a real old timer like me, you remember the really large 8-inch square floppy disk that you could literally hold and flop in your hand. That's why they were called floppy disks.
Right.
Well, that's what's being used in our missile silos.
Wow.
Also, in addition, our missiles are very, very outdated. For example, some of the missiles at the core of our arsenal are called the Minutemen intercontinental ballistic missiles. They originally went into service in the 1960s and 70s. And at this point, the U.S. military plans to keep them in service until at least 2030, which is absolutely insane. So our missiles are old and aging. Russia is building state-of-the-art. But of even greater concern to me and to Bible prophecy students is the Russian submarines. And in particular, I'm talking about the Bore-class nuclear submarine. And these are brand new nuclear submarines. They can dive deeper than 1,200 feet. They can carry up to 20 nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then each of these missiles, they can carry 10 detachable MIRV warheads. And we've already talked about what those can do. So 20 missiles times 10 warheads each. So you basically got 20 nuclear warheads per submarine.
We've actually got 200 nuclear warheads, right? 20 missiles, each one 10, that's 200. So they can take out 200 cities with one submarine.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. And so you're exactly right. And so each submarine is basically a country killer all by itself. But what makes these submarines particularly dangerous is that the Russians are saying that these are almost silent compared to previous generations of submarines.
Black hole.
And yeah, they're called black hole submarines. So what that means is they can come right up to our coastline, pop up, fire their missiles, and they can be at our cities within just a couple of minutes. Unlike in the old days, the whole paradigm was, well, the Russians would launch their missiles, they would go over the polar ice cap, it would take 20 minutes, maybe in half an hour to get to our cities. In the meantime, we could see that, launch our missiles in response, and the Russians, wouldn't want that. So they would be, the whole idea during the Cold War was that there was this theory of mutually assured destruction. If the Russians launched their missiles, they would be destroyed too. But now that's changed. And for those that doubt this, I want to read for you a brief excerpt from a Fox News article published back in 2012. This is a few years ago. Quote, a Russian nuclear-powered attack submarine armed with long-range cruise missiles operated undetected in the Gulf of Mexico for several weeks, and its travel in strategic U.S. waters was only confirmed after it left the region, the Washington Free Beacon has learned. And so what this Russian submarine came in, cruised around, nobody knew it was there. And that should be very alarming, because if these Russian submarines, it's why back during the Cold War we didn't want missiles in Cuba, because it gave the Russians such an advantage. They could launch missiles, they would be here in just a couple minutes and wipe us out. If these submarines allow Russians actually to get much closer, if they can come up to our coastlines right along the Gulf of Mexico, pop up, launch their missiles, hit us within just a couple of minutes, wipe out our military bases, our nuclear silos, our leadership, and so on, it could basically decapitate us in a single assault.
Let me read Henry Groover what he saw, and this was back December 14th, 1986. And he says, I saw submarines emerging from under the surface. I was surprised at how close they were to our borders. They were in our territorial waters. It was almost like they were sitting on our beaches. I saw missiles come out and hit eastern and western coastal cities. I cried out and I said, oh God, when will this be? And what will be the sign of its coming? I heard an audible voice speak from behind me and say, when Russia opens her doors and lets the masses go, the free world will occupy themselves with transporting, housing, feeding, and caring for the masses, and will let down their weapons and cry peace and safety. Then sudden destruction will come. Then is when it will come.
Those words ring so true to what we're seeing. For so long, people laughed at people like Henry Groover, and they said, oh, that could never happen. But now we're seeing the pieces come into place. Very likely, the missiles that Henry Groover saw in his vision are the brand new missiles that were designed to go on these brand new submarines. They're called the Bulava submarine-launched nuclear missile. And the Russians, they've had some problems in developing this missile. At first, some of the initial tests didn't go so well, but now they seem to have ironed out the problems. These Bulava submarine-launched nuclear missiles have a range of up to 10,000 kilometers. Each warhead has a yield of approximately 550 kilotons. And not only are these immensely powerful missiles, but they're also designed to evade any kind of defenses. According to U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Thomas Spahn, these Bulava submarine-launched nuclear missiles, they can conduct evasive post-launch maneuvers and deploy a variety of countermeasures and decoys to defend against interception. Its 10 hypersonic, independently maneuverable warheads are protected against both physical and electromagnetic pulse damage to ensure that they can reach their targets intact. The Russians are designing these new weapons in order to evade any kind of defenses. We don't have defenses against them anyway, but the Russians are designing them against any type of missile defense, countermeasures, anything like that, because the Russians want their missiles to reach their targets.
Absolutely. Let me read this. Jeremiah chapter 50, and this is talking about America, verse 9. For lo, I will raise up a cause to come up against Babylon, that's America, an assembly of great nations from the north country. Of course, go north of America, you get Canada. North of Canada, you get Russia. Now listen to this. And they shall assemble themselves in array against her. From thence shall she be taken. Her arrows shall be as a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain, which means when Russia fires their missiles, they don't miss. Only modern warfare could make that happen. We're right at this happening now.
Absolutely. We're right at the door. Another thing that the Russians have brought back during the Cold War, the Soviet Union had 12 strategic nuclear missile trains. In other words, if a missile is sitting in a silo or in a stationary location, it's pretty easy to target once you know where it is. And you mentioned this in a previous broadcast, Dan. If you put a missile on a train and you can move it around, then you don't necessarily know where it is, and you can't target it. Well, the Soviet Union had 12 such nuclear trains, but then we had the end of the Cold War.
We'll be right back after this message. The next speaker at the Prophecy Club from Seattle is famous for his news articles. Michael Snyder will speak on Prepare for the Economic Collapse and World War III. Topics are the next Great Depression, 20 signs Russia is preparing to fight and win a nuclear World War III. And the second talk is the regathering of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Every single son of Abraham and almost all Christians en masse will soon move to Israel. Quote, I will cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Jehovah. Israel will get back all of her land. Massive amounts of oil will be discovered. She will be the wealthiest of all nations on earth. Michael will speak Saturday evening at 7 and Sunday morning at 9:30 to noon, April 11 and 12 at Prophecy Club, 2540 K Avenue in Plano behind the Whataburger. Order the DVDs at prophecyclub.com. That's Saturday night at 7, Sunday morning 9:30, April 11 and 12. Prophecy Club, corner of Park and K behind the Whataburger in Plano. See you there! Jonathan Wright just made the brand new DVD called Prophecy in the Bible Codes. He has been researching Bible codes for 10 years, making code charts for 6 years. He's made over 500 code charts, and in this DVD he covers 60 of the best ones, such as the fall of America. Who are the two witnesses? Is Obama the Antichrist? Will there be a third world war? Will America be nuked and fall? Who is the Mahdi? Will there be a caliphate? What are the true origins of Islam? When does the rapture take place? What is the role of the Pope and the Vatican? Is the age of grace about to end? Who are the Illuminati? Will there be a third temple? It'll be 2 DVDs, roughly 5 hours of teaching, plus an extra CD, and the CD has a book on it that explains the codes, plus over 100 of the charts so you can look at them on your computer. Valued at $90, available through the Prophecy Club now for a gift of just $50. That's 2 DVDs and 1 CD for a gift of $50. Call 785-266-1112, 785-266-1112, or go to prophecyclub.com. That's Prophecy in the Bible Codes, 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. And now, back to the program.
Well, the Soviet Union had 12 such nuclear trains, but then we had the end of the Cold War. The Soviet Union fell apart, and those went out of service. But just recently, Russia has brought them back. It's called the Barguzin Strategic Missile Train. They're starting to roll these out across the United States. And so what they're going to do is they're no longer banned under the New START Treaty. So they've revived this program. They're going to bring them out. And so they're going to have these trains which move around. The U.S. isn't necessarily going to know where they're going to be. This gives them another strategic advantage and is another offensive weapon in their pocket for a future war with the United States. In addition to these offensive weapons, a defensive system which completely changes the balance of power between the United States and Russia is the new S-500 missile defense system. Is specifically designed to target high-altitude targets, such as intercontinental ballistic missiles. It is planned to have a range of 500 to 600 kilometers with altitudes as high as 40 kilometers up. Well, a Russian first strike would try to wipe out as much of our offensive nuclear capability as possible. But if we are able to return fire through our submarines, well, this S-500 missile defense system is designed to take out everything that we fire back. So this changes the calculus, because before the idea was, well, if the Russians fire anything, it's going to hit us. If we fire anything, it's going to hit the Russians. Well, if the Russians have the capability of intercepting our missiles, well, then they have a shield to keep them from being damaged. It makes them much more likely to conduct an offensive campaign against us, to hit us with a first strike if they believe that they can intercept anything that survives and that we send back.
You know, in all of the things I have read, the prophecies, all of the prophecies I've heard from the modern prophets and holy servants of God, not one of them has ever pictured any of the missiles falling on Russia. And now, yes, the angel does say that God raises up China, Japan, many of the nations. They go against the Russians. They defeat the Russians. So we do know that eventually the Russians are defeated in this thing. But, of course, then the angel went on to say, but they make the Russians their leader. And I believe that's where they formed the world government. Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation 13:1, many verses talks about. However, the point is, it seems that when Russia launches her attack on America, there is nothing we send back to hit Russia at all. One of the visions that was given to Dmitri, he was standing on the California coastline next to the angel, and he said he saw planes come in the sky, so many of them, that the sun was darkened by these planes. And the angel said, these planes are filled with atom bombs, and no one and nothing will be able to stop them. In another vision, he saw an American plane going up to try to attack them, but as they began to draw near, they would just fall back to the earth in a flame of fire. In other words, these Russian airplanes, there is not going to be anybody stop them from delivering their nuclear bombs. And my research tells me that Russia has some 8,000 nuclear warheads, and those are the ones that they claim. Who knows how many they have that they haven't claimed? In other words, try to imagine what America would look like if just 4,000 nuclear bombs were to land across America, dropped at will, any place, anytime they wanted to, until they are totally finished. One servant of God saw that the bombing goes on for 3 days. Now try to imagine, what would America look like after 3 days of dropping nuclear weapons?
We also need to take into account the possibility of an EMP shockwave, where the Russians explode a nuclear weapon or a couple nuclear weapons very high up over the United States, fry electronics from coast to coast, and that'll apply to a lot of military, our weapon systems, but also fry our computers, internet, electronics. And that's a whole nother program talking about the possibility of an EMP burst, what that could do to our economy and everything else.
Let me read for you what Henry Groover was shown there again. He says, all of a sudden I was up above the earth, looking down on the earth like a globe. As I looked down on the earth, I saw massive amounts of ships and airplanes coming up out of this outlet out of Norway. He said they headed down between the United States and Europe. They literally covered the whole Atlantic. Then I looked over on the globe of the United States. I saw coming out of these radio communication towers. He said, I saw jagged lines, and he said he later discovered that those were cell phone towers. But of course, in 1986, there wasn't any cell phones. Anyway, he says he saw jagged lines coming out of these towers showing that the communications came out. Then all of a sudden, as I was looking down, the jagged lines began to sprinkle down on the earth like dust. And I thought, oh no, they're not getting through. They're not getting through. They don't know what is happening. They're totally oblivious. They didn't know that America was under attack. Now, another prophecy was shown that there will be two EMP attacks, one from the east, one from the west, go up high, that covers each one of the coasts. Then one will come down from satellites to the center of the country. All three of these nuclear EMP devices explode at the same time. In other words, it fries every computer chip. That means we go back to the way we were living 100 years ago. All electricity is out, all cell phones, no cars made after 1985 will start. We are dark, blind, and helpless.
Yeah, and people need to realize very quickly they would be out of food because most grocery stores,
Right.
They only have what they have on their shelves, and they rely on just-in-time inventory coming in and resupplying them on a continual basis.
Let me just say something about that. My wife and I, there was a storm coming. Now, we're just talking a rainstorm, okay, here in the DFW area, and we went down to buy regular groceries. We weren't going to buy any groceries for any storm. You know, we spent 22 years in Kansas. The storms in the DFW area don't bother us, okay? You live in Kansas 22 years, and you know what a real storm is. Anyway, so we went to the grocery store. We were shocked because all of the cupboards in this grocery store, this is a large grocery store like Kroger, okay, all gone. I mean, they were cleaned out, and this is just a storm. We said, wow, what would it be like in a real emergency? Answer is no water, no food. If the electricity goes off, you're talking within 3 days, all of the food starts spoiling. Within 2 weeks, people start starving.
Exactly. And then with no electricity, your water stations are going to be shutting down. You're not going to have water coming out of your taps in very short order. You know, what are you going to do if you don't have water coming out of your taps? What are you going to do if you can't get medicine? You know, so many Americans are on drugs today. And when I do my presentation at the Prophecy Club, I'm going to bring a few statistics about that. But what are you going to do without your medicine? You know, we take for granted that the system is always going to be there, that it's always going to provide what we need. And we've lost, back during the Great Depression, our ancestors learned that you should always have a food pantry. You should always have something stored up. In the case of an emergency, if in case something happens, you should always have enough in your home to be able to depend upon. But we've lost that today. We're so used to running out to the Walmart or running out to the big box store and getting what we need at a moment's notice. But what if someday you couldn't do that? And it's not only a Russian nuclear attack that can cause this. You know, an EMP burst from the sun could cause a similar phenomenon, or at least for the short term. Some of the unprecedented natural disasters that we're going to talk about, whether it's a tsunami, East Coast, whether it's about a New Madrid earthquake, could cause a massive breakdown in our distribution and transportation system. So that is why I encourage people so much to have food put away, to have a water put away, or a plan to provide you and your family with water if the water system breaks down. All the supplies, medicine, all the supplies that you're going to need for an extended period of time, you should have some of those stored up.
We've run out of time for today, brothers and sisters, but I encourage you to do a couple of things. One is you got to come to this meeting. If you can't come to the meeting, for sure, get the DVDs. Now, we do have an awesome offer put together for you on this. Grab your cell phone right now and type in this number so you can find out what we're talking about here. 785-266-1112. You're going to call in and you're going to get at least Michael Snyder's 2 DVDs, Prepare for the Economic Collapse in World War III, and The Regathering of the 10 Lost Tribes of Israel. Now, he's going to be speaking on the first topic Saturday evening, April the 11th. The next topic, the next morning, the 12th at 9:30, from 9:30 to noon. That's at the Prophecy Club, Spirit of Prophecy Church, 2540 K Avenue. That's 2540 K Avenue in Plano. That's on the corner of Park and K, right behind the Whataburger. Get those 2 DVDs and or come to the meeting. However, we also have an awesome package put together for you. You can get Christine Weich's DVD, Standing for the Lord, plus Jonathan Matthew Wright's DVD, Prophecies in the Bible Codes. Both these guys' DVDs are brand new, just here in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And you can also get the 2 DVDs from Michael Snyder. All 5 of those DVDs, all brand new, valued at $140. Get all of them for a gift of just $90. Call 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. 785-266-1112 or prophecyclub.com. Now, Michael, you got just a minute more. Say what you'd like to say to talk the folks into coming and hearing you.
Stan, I want people to understand that what I'm about to present at the Prophecy Club in these 2 presentations, these are the most important presentations that I have ever made in my entire life. The information that I'm going to share with people is literally life-changing. In the first presentation, I'm going to be sharing with people not only about the coming economic collapse, which I've written so much about on my websites, but I'm going to set the stage for what life in the United States is going to look like from right now all the way up to Russian missiles falling on U.S. cities we've talked about in this program. From the economic collapse all the way up to the Russian attack, everything in between, the most comprehensive presentation and roadmap that people have ever come across. I'm going to talk about things I've never publicly discussed or written about before. People do not want to miss this, and I can't express how important this information is.
All right, he's going to be on again tomorrow. We're going to continue talking with him, and we're going to be talking about the 10 tribes of Israel and basically the Christians and Jews all moving back to Israel. All of these are going to be in these 2 DVDs I encourage you to get. Call 785-266-1112. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your regular monthly support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. Jonathan Wright just made the brand new DVD called Prophecy in the Bible Codes. He has been researching Bible codes for 10 years, making code charts for 6 years. He's made over 500 code charts, and in this DVD he covers 60 of the best ones, such as the fall of America. Who are the 2 witnesses? Is Obama the Antichrist? Will there be a 3rd World War? Will America be nuked and fall? Who is the Mahdi? Will there be a caliphate? What are the true origins of Islam? When does the rapture take place? What is the role of the Pope and the Vatican? Is the age of grace about to end? Who are the Illuminati? Will there be a 3rd temple? It'll be 2 DVDs, roughly 5 hours of teaching, plus an extra CD, and the CD has a book on it that explains the codes, plus over 100 of the charts so you can look at them on your computer. Valued at $90, available through the Prophecy Club now for a gift of just $50. That's 2 DVDs and 1 CD for a gift of $50. Call 785-266-1112, 785-266-1112, or go to prophecyclub.com. That's Prophecy in the Bible Codes, 785-266-1112, or prophecyclub.com. The next speaker at the Prophecy Club from Seattle is famous for his news articles. Michael Snyder will speak on Prepare for the Economic Collapse and World War III. Topics are the next Great Depression, 20 signs Russia is preparing to fight and win a nuclear World War III. And the second talk is the regathering of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Every single son of Abraham and almost all Christians en masse will soon move to Israel. Quote, I will cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Jehovah. Israel will get back all of her land. Massive amounts of oil will be discovered. She will be the wealthiest of all nations on earth. Michael will speak Saturday evening at 7 and Sunday morning at 9:30 to noon, April 11 and 12 at Prophecy Club, 2540 K Avenue in Plano behind the Whataburger. Order the DVDs at prophecyclub.com. That's Saturday night at 7, Sunday morning 9:30, April 11 and 12. Prophecy Club, corner of Park and K behind the Whataburger in Plano. See you there!